Just as every person is unique, so is every family. Today, let's explore a little bit more about just how special each family is. Greetings, everyone. This is Gail Macinda with Maestro Heights, and here today we are continuing our conversation with Miss Nancy Ruth from Parent Road Ministries, and this has just been a really fun thing. We would really appreciate it, both of us would, if you hear something new, something that you like, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons along the way, because as much as I'd like to say it doesn't make a difference, it really does, so we'd appreciate it. So we've been talking a little bit about the importance of family stories and why that this is important and why it's important that we write these things down or record them in video, however we want to do it. One of the things that I have done is I began doing genealogy study, the story of my family, many, many years ago. And the way that the story actually got started is that my great-grandmother immigrated from England, and she told this story to my grandmother, who then told it to me. And I spent a lot of those Christmas holidays while my mom and dad were both working at my grandmother's house, baking cookies and decorating them and things like that. And during that time, my grandmother would tell me these stories. Well, she passed in 1968, and I remember coming home from the funeral and being really struck by the thought that I was never going to hear those stories again. And so, even though I wasn't very old, I went to my room and recorded that story the best that I could to try to remember it. And I still have that piece of paper. Well, then we fast forward a little bit until when I was in high school. And in high school, we were studying a unit about World War I. And I will tell you, I'm a bit embarrassed to say, I wasn't particularly interested in the story of World War I. However, I was charged with researching about it, so I went to my grandfather, who was an actual enlisted in the army in World War I. And as I began to talk to him about it, I found out that he lied about his age to enlist. Now, my grandfather would not have lied about anything for any reason. So what was it about World War I that motivated him so much that he was willing to lie about his age to enlist to serve his country? That was my hook into history. And that was the moment that I really began to connect the stories of America with the stories of our families and how these two influence one another. So much of what our ancestors have done is influenced not only by their own personal values and morals and training and their own personal compass, but also about what was going on around them in the world and how it influenced them. And that is part of what we're going to be talking about today. Miss Nancy Ruth, get back on here and let's talk a little bit about some of the things that have been going on in your family as well.
Yeah, we have some really neat things that happen in our family. In fact, we discovered, my grandfather was the one that was really big into genealogy, and he did a lot of research and things and discovered some really neat stuff. And then when he passed, my grandmother and my mom took it on. And I have upstairs a whole closet full of genealogy stuff that I'm not going to go through, but I will save it for the person who will. But I collect the stories. I love the stories and the things we found out. For example, one of the things we discovered is that one of my ancestors was the bodyguard of George Washington.
That's cool.
I know, right? And did you know that there were some really important regulations and things that you had to do to be a bodyguard? You also served as a body double, so like a decoy. So you had to be the same height as George Washington. You had actually a little bit taller. You had to have similar coloring as him. I know, right? And you had to be able to read and write like he could. So if something happened to him on the battlefield, things could still continue and you could read the messages and things. And I just thought that was really fascinating. And so being able to have that claim to fame is really kind of fun.
And once again, it helps us make that personal connection to history. I mean, we've all heard the stories of George Washington, but when you know that you had somebody who had that kind of a personal connection, it makes you want to learn more about that topic, that person, that era, everything that was going on around at that time. And that is really the beauty of what we do. So we have kind of two different things that I work on. One is developing the stories of our family. And to do that, I have a course that's called My Family in History, where I take you through the beginning journeys of how to record and document and organize, wink, wink,
I know, right?
all of those.
You're thinking of my closet. I know you are.
Just saying, just saying. All of those documents and objects and artifacts that we have, and what to do with them, and how to inform them, and the importance of doing things in a particular order. It's not a little elementary level course. This is for people who really want to get into their genealogy and get serious about it. But we hope that you'll take a look at that. It's on the Maestro Heights store page, and find out a little bit more about it that way too. But even that had a whole nother bunch of stuff that came off with it. So an example would be, I was doing the story of it was my great uncle, who I didn't really know much about. Now, I told you about my grandfather, who was in World War I. His wife, my grandmother, who was the mandolin person that we talked about earlier in a part one of our video today, was at home at the time, and so she told about some of the things, and some of the things about her brother, who was also in service at that time. But then the story of him kind of faded. We didn't hear much about him after that, so it was a bit of a puzzlement. Well, I decided that I would really dig into his story and find out more about him. And I found one of the things that I found absolutely fascinating was that I found a passenger list for the USS Mongolia. And so I began doing research on the Mongolia. If he was on that ship, I wanted to know about that ship. It turns out that the USS Mongolia was the first American vessel to fire shots on the high seas of World War I. This turns out to be a very significant ship that was front page news at the time, but we kind of have forgotten all about it. So while I was looking about Harry Hatmaker, I also learned all about the USS Mongolia.
That is so cool.
It really is an amazing story. And we have a whole ebook about this. The USS Mongolia is one of the Maestro Heights ebooks. And we'll put the links for the store and all that in there too. So you can take a look at that. And I hope that you will, because it was pretty cool. However, while I was doing this, I also found out some more about Harry. And I learned why we don't know much about him. He, like all of our families, we have some who kind of strayed off the path and didn't exactly follow the straight and narrow. He was, the kindest thing I can say is that he was a colorful character. And I know that he was much loved by his little sister, my grandmother. And I will take that memory of him, rather than some of the rather sketchy things I discovered in my own family research. We all have those things in our families. If you think that you're going to be getting into studying your family history and it's all going to be just bright, shiny, squeaky, clean stuff, it's not. And I think that one of the things that we have to learn as genealogists, as people, as believers, is how to handle those situations that come up that are not to our standards or our morals or our current beliefs.
Can I interrupt with a story there?
I was getting ready to.
You were setting me up, weren't you? My grandfather, who was doing all this genealogy stuff, he was a Southern Baptist preacher, and he got stuck at one point in our family tree. In fact, we have, like I said in our first video, I have a whole wall full of pictures with my family, old family photos going back several generations. And the Kentucky Colonel, which is the guy with the white beard, he lived in Kentucky, believe it or not, and looks like the KFC guy. But my grandfather got stuck because he couldn't find this guy's parents. He couldn't get earlier than this Kentucky Colonel, and he couldn't figure it out. So then after he passed, my mother and my grandmother took over the research, and they figured out what happened. And there's a reason my grandfather got stuck, because he could see it. He just didn't want to see it because he didn't like what he found. Because the Kentucky Colonel was born out of wedlock. And for a Southern Baptist preacher, that's a huge no-no. So, you know, you will find things. And one of the hard parts about genealogy is, you know, being willing to find the things that you really wish were not in your family tree.
Well, it kind of swings both ways too, because not only do you find things that are difficult to accept, but are proven to be truth, you also have to be willing to accept the things that were passed down to you as truth that turn out not to be. Because I have worked with so many families who say, oh yes, we are related to this royalty, or to this Native American tribe, or to any number of things that are, or a famous person, or whatever it happens to be. We don't get to take credit for the things that the people who went before us. We are responsible for what we do. We have to answer for our actions. We don't get to ride on their coat. By the same token, we don't have to carry the burden of the ones that came before us too. So learn from these things, enjoy the journey, but you know, every one of them, these people all came together to create you. If all of these people hadn't come together in the time and the way that they did, you or I or anyone else would not be the people that we are here today. So it is, no matter what is in your history, it's cause for celebration. Enjoy the journey. It is a fascinating one. It is a mystery like none other.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love studying the Bible, and especially the Old Testament. And I'm weird because I love the Old Testament, but I love the stories and the genealogy and the family stories that you see in there. And it's the family stories of God's people. And there's some colorful characters in there too.
There certainly are. There certainly are.
Yeah, and I love that because the testimony of Scripture shows us, like you were saying, you are not your history, your family history. Good or bad, you have to make your own decisions and make your own life. And you can do with it with what you like. And I think that is amazing.
It really is. It is a blessing many times over.
Is.
Well, would you tell us a little bit about some of the products that you have, that and a little bit about what your ministry is?
Well, I work with Parent Road Ministries. We do videos, we do emails, we do family Bible studies, and we do memory verses and all kinds of things. Basically, we want to see kids living for Jesus. And so if you'd like to learn more about that, you can check us out on our website. It's parentroadmin.com, M-I-N. And while you're looking for Parent Road Ministries, you can also look for our YouTube channel, where we had the first half of this discussion, which we had a blast with.
This has been fun. I am hoping that we have an opportunity to do some more of these in the future too. If you guys who are watching are having fun watching us, I assure you there have been a whole lot of giggles and good laughter and good friendship that's happened out of this one for us too. Well, Maestro Heights, again, we are really focusing on American history and the story of your family, and you can look under maestroheights.com, or if you find gailmacinda.com easier to spell, either one of them will take you there, /store. And you'll be able to see what we has there. Okay, guys, one more thing I'm going to leave you with, and that is the way I close out most of my videos, and that is to say that, remember, we learn from the past, but we do not live there. Go be awesome today and make your own history. Bye for now. Thank you.